The Lord of Supreme Mysticism can simultaneously reside within everyone's heart or even within the atoms by his Paramatma feature, his plenary portion. Therefore, from within the body of Uttara, he covered the embryo to save Maharaja Parikshit and protect the progeny of Maharaja Kuru, of whom King Pandu was also a descendant. Both the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu belonged to the same dynasty of Maharaja Kuru. Therefore, both of them were generally known as Kurus. But when there was differences between the two families, the sons of Dhritarashtra were known as Kurus, whereas the sons of Pandu were known as Pandavas. Since the sons and grandsons of Dhritarashtra were all killed in the battle of Kurukshetra, the last son of the dynasty is designated as the son of the Kurus. So today's verse of discussion, we find that how Sri Krishna, the Lord of everything, is also residing everyone's heart as Paramatma, and how he protected the embryo of Uttara. So the verses we have been discussing over the last few weeks, we hear that the battle of Kurukshetra was fought and Dhritarashtra had lost all of his sons, and to retaliate this, Ashwatthama was trying various ways and means how to take his revenge, and he had beheaded the 5 sons of Arjuna, and now as the last resort he released the Brahmastra weapon towards Maharaj Parikshit, who was in the womb of Uttara. And as this verse is explaining, Maharaj Parikshit was the last heir of the entire Kuru dynasty. Of the sons of Dhritarashtra and the sons of Pandu, he is the only grandson, he is the only descendant of the heir who is left behind. And Ashwatthama wanted to wipe him out, kill him. So he had released the Brahmastra weapon. So at this time, since the war had already concluded, Lord Krishna had boarded the chariot and he was getting ready to go towards Dwaraka. At this time, Uttara comes hurried towards the Lord and she prays for protection. And at that time, Krishna, because he is seated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, he, by his internal energy, covers the embryo of Maharaj Parikshit and thereby saves the effect of Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama. So this is the context of this verse. This verse, as it is explaining the role of Paramatma, we also get to know more details about this feature of Paramatma, of the Supreme Lord, through Bhagavad Gita. In the 18th chapter, 61st verse, Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. Krishna is telling, I am seated in everyone's heart and I am wandering and I am directing the wanderings of all the living entities. In the 18th chapter. So now we should understand, when Krishna says that I am seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma and I am directing the wanderings of all the movements or the activities of the living entities, what does this mean? Does this mean that the Lord is responsible for all of our activities? Does this mean that we can do anything that we wish to, and because Lord is claiming that He is the director of all our activities, that He is responsible for them? No. Recently I was discussing with a devotee couple who have taken to Krishna consciousness very recently, about 6 months ago. So they have also been reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. So, and the husband is convinced that yes, Paramatma or the Lord is directing all our activities. And it so happens that when both of them were going from their home to their office or somewhere, so the husband stops the car and he wants to buy some ice cream from the shop. At that time the wife stops him saying, "No, that is not offered to Krishna. We are not supposed to eat bhoga." So at that time, that argument of the wife is countered by the philosophy which is quoted by the husband. He says, "No, Paramatma is wandering our activities. So it is Paramatma residing within my heart who has given me the intelligence to find an ice cream shop. He has only made me stop the car. He has only helped me have the money, currency to buy an ice cream." So in many ways, he is completely convinced that his activity or his desire to do something is under the direction of the Supreme Lord who is residing as Paramatma within my heart. So this is how he says. So what is the answer? So is he right? Because Krishna is claiming here, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. So I am seated in everyone's heart and I am directing the wanderings of all living entities. So as we understand from Srila Prabhupada's teachings, those activities which are helping us go towards Krishna are directed by the internal energy of the Lord, or is directed by the Paramatma. And those activities which we are planning, and if those activities are taking us away from Krishna, then that is not the direction of Paramatma. See, although Paramatma is seated in everyone's heart, we are not like machine. We are not like this table or a microphone. If I throw this microphone here, it will not retaliate, it will not rebel. If I throw this table, if I cut this into pieces, it will not retaliate. But we as human beings, we have got the freedom, we have got the free will, we have got the power of choice. So, which is not there in any other living entities. And therefore, the Shastras explain that this law of karma is applicable only to human beings and not to the lower forms of life, not to any other species. In any other species, if a tiger is killing a deer and eating, that is doing its dharma. There is no concept of law of karma for other species. Whereas, human beings are under the ambit of law of karma because we have got the power of discretion. We have got the power of discrimination. We can choose between good and the bad. So the Lord has given us that free will, and therefore it is by the choice of our activities we decide whether to go towards Krishna or away from Krishna. And we have to understand that if our activities are enabling us to move towards the Lord, then that is directed by the Paramatma, because Paramatma wants all of us to quickly go back to Him, to turn towards Him. And if the activity, whatever we are planning, if it is taking us away from the Lord, then that is the direction of Mahamaya. So this is the understanding that we get from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And the second important feature of this Paramatma feature is that one who is acting under the direction of Paramatma, he will not be coming under the influence of actions and reactions. Otherwise, any activity in this world you do, every action has got an equal and opposite reaction. And sometimes people are under the conception that if I do some good philanthropic activities, some seva, some charitable activities like opening an hospital and opening a school, giving them subsidized cost for education or for treatments, so they feel that they get lot of punya. Yes, that is true. You get lot of punya, but that has an reaction as well. And that reaction is that you will have to be born. We all have to take birth again to enjoy the results of our good activities. So just like we see sometimes people born in some great aristocratic families, people with unusual intelligence, people with unusual beauty, people with unusual ability, talents, all these are nothing but the results of our past activities. So even if we are doing charitable activities in this life, we have to take birth and enjoy the results of those good activities. And if we are doing sinful activities, we have to suffer the reactions of those bad activities. So whether good or bad in this material world, in this phenomenal world, we have to enjoy or suffer the reactions of our work. But the speciality of akarma, which Krishna talks about in Bhagavad Gita, akarma means those activities which are performed under the direction of Paramatma. Those activities are freed of action and reaction. They are not coming into this category of reactions at all. Like Prabhupada tells in chapter 18, text 13 purport, acts done under his direction means Paramatma's direction, from within yield no reaction, either in this life or in the life after death. He who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any reactions. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of God. So Prabhupada is telling that when we act under the directions of Paramatma, we are not bound by these actions and reactions. So that is another important principle of acting under the direction of Paramatma. Yet another verse where Krishna talks about acting as Paramatma in Bhagavad Gita is chapter 15, text 15, where Krishna is telling Arjuna, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishtaha matta smritim jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda videva chaham. Krishna is telling that Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishtaha, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes mattaha, from me comes smritir, jnanam and apohanam cha. Jnanam refers to knowledge, smritim is remembrance, and apohanam is forgetfulness. So it's very clear from Krishna's instruction that whatever knowledge we have, it is nothing but the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And if we are able to remember the Supreme Lord, that is again the mercy of the Lord. And Krishna also says, even forgetfulness comes from me, which is quite surprising for a neophyte devotee. Because sometimes those who are not believers of God, they think that I will not believe in God. I will believe in science. Because I have a power of thinking, so I believe in science, in technology, in experimentation, in logic, in all these things. But I don't believe in the Lord. So for a neophyte devotee, it seems that a person can decide whether he wants to believe the Lord or not. So, but from Bhagavad Gita, from this verse, we understand that because that living entity, because that jiva desired that I should be away from Krishna, and he believes that Krishna is not there, then Krishna will bless him with forgetfulness. Krishna will tell him, yes, I will make and he will make his faith stronger. That he'll come across so many instances and logics and so many counterproof against the existence of the Lord. So Krishna is telling even this forgetfulness comes from him. And the third reference that we find in Bhagavad Gita about the Paramatma feature of the Lord is in the 13th chapter, 23rd verse, where Krishna says, Upadrushtanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmeti chapyukto dehesmin purusha paraha. Krishna is telling, yet in this body there is another transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, supreme proprietor, and he is doing the role of overseer and permitter. Anumanta and Upadrushta. Upadrushta is overseer or the witnesser, and Anumanta is the permitter or the sanctioner, and he is known as the super soul. So these are the two activities which Lord is explaining himself to Arjuna, that I, seated as Paramatma, I do two things. One is Anumanta, means I sanction, I permit, and Upadrushta, I am the witnesser of all the activities, which means that none of our activities are outside the purview of the Lord's control. Every single activity, not just activity, even the desire that we have, which may not be known to anybody in the world, even not even to our parents or relatives, but that desire will be known to the Supreme Lord, because He is witnessing all our activities, all our desires from within. And He is also the sanctioner. Sometimes we see people have a goal and they achieve that, and sometimes people have a goal and endeavor so much but cannot achieve. So the Lord, in both the cases, He has permitted, and in other case He has not permitted, based on certain principles, and that principles are very difficult to understand. They are known as the law of karma. So whether we deserve or not. So therefore, even in the mainstream world, there is a concept of deserve and desire. We may desire so many things, but only when we deserve, the Supreme Lord will sanction that. And if we don't deserve, Lord will not sanction. So people sometimes cannot understand. They go on putting endeavor without realizing the aspect of the sanctioning of the Supreme Lord, which is very important. And some of the important points in the purport of this verse, Upadrushta Anumanta, which Prabhupada drives, we will discuss one by one. The first point is, many times people ask this question, why am I suffering? I have not done any evil consciously, so but still I am forced to suffer. Why is that? And here Prabhupada explains in this purport, the Lord is always eager to take the jivas back to the spiritual energy, but due to the minute independence of the jiva, he is continually rejecting the association of the Paramatma. See, although the Lord is willing to take us back to Godhead, but because we are endowed with a free will to decide whether to surrender to Him or not, we are continuously rejecting the directions of the Supreme Lord. And this misuse of independence is the cause of His material strife in the conditioned nature. So Prabhupada clearly explains, what is the cause of our material suffering? The reason is our going away from the directions and instructions of Krishna. We are not ready to surrender unto the Lord, and therefore we are suffering. I came across one nice pastime of Srila Prabhupada. In the early 1970s or late 60s, when Prabhupada was vigorously preaching in the West and expanding the movement, he had very few disciples, and of that few disciples, some of them were sannyasis, most of them were sannyasis, and then probably a very few handful, one or two of them were grihasthas, married. So in that, one of them was Tamal Krishna Goswami. So Tamal Krishna Goswami is recollecting this pastime of his association with Srila Prabhupada. So Tamal Krishna Das is telling, probably he was the only grihastha at that time who was known as Tamal Krishna Das Adhikari, whereas there were lot of sannyasi disciples, Kirtanananda Swami, and then so many other, Madhudvisha Swami, Devananda Swami, Kartikeya Swami, they were all sannyasi disciples. And Prabhupada had just formed GBC, so that he disciplines the activities of preaching and expansion across the world. And Tamal Krishnadas is recollecting that he didn't even know the full-fledged responsibilities and roles of GBC, but when the option was given, he chose India of all the other places in the world, because he knew that Srila Prabhupada will be coming here very often and he can have a very extended association of Srila Prabhupada. So with that intention, he chose India, and for the next 4 years, he was very happy for having chosen this option, because for almost 6 to 8 months, Prabhupada stayed in India when compared to all other parts of the world. So he was very happy about his decision, and it was a time where Prabhupada was establishing the movement at Kolkata, and all these disciples of Srila Prabhupada were pushing hard to expand the movement and all that. And during those days, when initially the ISKCON movement was opened in India and in Calcutta especially, Prabhupada had introduced life patronship program. Whereas prior to this, when Prabhupada was preaching in the Western countries, there was nothing called life patronship. And also there was no necessity for managing the finance or the accounts in the Western countries, because hardly there were any financial transactions. So there were no books of account kept. So very few transactions were there. But the case was different back here in India. So when Prabhupada introduced the life patronship program, lot of people showed interest and they started contributing money towards the program. So there was a necessity or a demand to keep the account books, so that there are proper transactions maintained, and receipts are issued to the donors, book sets are issued to the donors. So there was a need for a lot of documentation, which was not the case earlier. So Tamal Krishna Goswami, he was trying very hard to manage all these things, but he was all by himself, so he could not manage. And then it so happened he went and requested one of the sannyasi disciples of Srila Prabhupada, can you help me manage these books of accounts? So for that disciple said, no, I am a sannyasi, I am engaged in playing harmonium only. So Tamal Krishna, he approached yet another devotee. He told, no, since I am a sannyasi, my work is only preaching, so I will not be doing all this work of keeping the accounts. So he tried like this many times, but then because most of them were sannyasis, they rejected the offer or the help requested by Tamal Krishna, saying that they have to preach. So he was every time being dejected, and the workload started mounting up, and finally he was completely devastated. He went and broke down in front of Srila Prabhupada. So he started crying profusely. And then Srila Prabhupada was amused by this behavior of Tamal Krishna. So he asked him what happened. So then Tamal Krishna says that nobody is helping me to do anything. I have to do everything myself. So I have no hopes. How can I do this? So when he told this and he was continuing to weep, then Prabhupada laughed. Prabhupada laughed, and Tamal Krishna was not able to accept that. He was expecting some sympathy, some kind words, some solution from Srila Prabhupada, that you will do something. So I am suffering so much, I am working all by himself, no support from your disciples. So he expected, that is the case, so I will do this, I will do that. So he elicited some response like that from Srila Prabhupada. But Srila Prabhupada was different in his response. He laughed. And when all these confused thoughts were going on in the mind of Tamal Krishna, Prabhupada said, that is good for you. So when the moment he heard that sentence, that is good for you, so Tamal Krishna stopped all his thoughts and he wanted to know how that is good for me. So he expected more to flow out from Srila Prabhupada's mouth, and that time Prabhupada explained that we should always pray for this situation. We should always expect this condition. Which condition? The condition of Tamal Krishna Goswami. So what was his condition? Of being so much overloaded with work and service that he really didn't know what to do and what not to do. So and Prabhupada said, this is a very fortunate condition you have got. You have been placed by the Supreme Lord's mercy and you should hanker for it. And he explains further that, and this is because there is no chance for Maya to enter in this stage. And he further goes on to explain that he tells a story to Tamal Krishna that once he started narrating a story about the context of a train in Indian country. So how a situation will be there in a train. So Prabhupada is telling this story to Tamal Krishna in continuing his explanation to him. So Prabhupada says, just like in the Indian travel, especially when you are traveling in the train, if suppose you have a reserved compartment, you have a berth and you sit, one person will come and he is a skinny, lean person and he will not have reservation. So he will be standing and he will look at you. So you will not be looking, but he will continue to look at you till you look back at him. This is all Prabhupada is explaining. Okay, and then the moment you look at him, he will establish an eye contact and he will have a small giggle on his face. He will smile. And then suppose if you smile, then he will increase that laughter smile and he will try to build a very strong bond with you. Why? Because you are seated and he is standing. So what is he expecting? For you to little move and adjust, and so that he also gets accommodated in that seat. So then after that, suppose you are successful till this point, then if that person is also receptive and sensitive and he also feels, okay, let me also offer a seat, let me also adjust. And by the time he moves little bit and makes way for that skinny lean person to sit, he will call his child, hey, please come, please come. So he will make his child sit. So then because child is seated, he wants to make him comfortable, he will little more move, he will call the second child, please come, you also sit here. And by the time he realizes anything, the third child is also there on the seat. So finally all three children are on the seat and this person is moved to the extreme corner. And then even before he realizes what is happening to him, he calls his fat wife there. And the moment she comes, what is this person expected to do? He is supposed to get up and leave the place. So Prabhupada told this story to Tamal Krishna Das, and he told, this is how Maya attacks us. First it will little show, okay, let us eat one small ice cream. Hey, ice cream, it's all made of milk. Milk products, there is no dosha. There is nobody has cooked. So no problem. So milk sweets are no problem. And fruits, it's okay. Fruit juice, tender coconut here and then, no problem. Because this is all naturally, it is all produced by the Lord Himself. So what is the harm? So these people have made prasadam. So they have completely conditioned us. We should think that this is also coming from the Supreme Lord. Yes, actually in one sense it is right. But if you are able to establish yourself to see everything as the energy of the Supreme Lord, then you are called a pure devotee. There is nothing, stopping us. But because we are not trained in that, Srila Prabhupada is suggesting us a series of rules and regulations where by following these rules and regulations, we can counteract the effects of Maya. So this is how Prabhupada explained that how we have to be considering ourselves very fortunate that if we are overloaded with service, and he is explaining us a very important moral through this story that we should hanker for more and more service. But in our conditioned life, we always try to avoid service. So suppose some festival is there, so and if you know that this is the Prabhu who will be calling me for service, if he is coming like this, we'll change our path and go like this. So because we don't want to do service, we want to chant or we want to have nice darshan, we want to stand in front of the deities on the day of Janmashtami for 10 hours and we have to have enjoy the beauty of the Lord. So we put ourselves in that false state of a pure devotee. So whereas Prabhupada is telling we should be hankering for more and more service, and once we do that, then Maya has no other way that it can capture us. So this is the beauty of Srila Prabhupada's instruction, that he has made the spiritual life very simple to us. We are supposed to have a PPT. Can we know that everybody has come? So the last point before we close today's discussion is that we were discussing about the Paramatma role and how we can take guidance from the role of from the Paramatma about the activities to be what we should do and what we should not do. And we see from the lot of celebrated devotees examples like the case of Kirchor Gopinath or the Sakshi Gopal, how Lord has reciprocated with the devotees. So the Paramatma within the heart, he has reciprocated with the devotees' desires of serving the Lord. Now when we tell these examples of Kirchor Gopinath, how we reciprocated to Madhavendra Puri or to Sakshi Gopal pastime, sometimes we are under the impression that no, they are all celebrated pure devotees of the Lord, whereas we are simple and neophyte devotees. So that is completely different, and our case it's completely different. No, Krishna says both are same. In the sense that even we can rise to that level. Or in other words, there is a law of reciprocation. As Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyam. As you surrender, so shall I reciprocate. So if we start taking guidance of Paramatma by following the directions of the Srila Prabhupada's instructions on how to conduct ourselves, how to do devotional service. So if we go on practicing this, we will reach a stage where there is complete transparency between you and the Paramatma within, and you start receiving direct instructions of Paramatma on how to advance your devotional service. So this is what we learn from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. So we'll end the discussions here, and we will be discussing for next 15 to 20 minutes about certain guidelines for the offerings that you are doing on the occasion of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja. Srila Prabhupada ki